for me, it just became like, how well does he mesh into my life? Which is what I said. Like, I think for my thing, I didn't want to start a new life. I want it to be like a smooth transition. So like, how well does he get to, like, how well does he interact with my family, my friends, the people that are important with me? And then seeing how well that interaction was is how I think my decision came.
Being the same faith is fundamental for Christians to get married. So that's the must.
I appreciate this time in singleness. I think it's very much needed for me to kind of figure out who I am, what I want, and like learning from people like this, like getting that advice.
One thing I noticed was like I'm always learning. Like I thought, after we were married, I'm like, oh, I know my wife pretty well. Like I think, I figured everything out. There's so much more.
Welcome to Unfiltered Faith, where we have real conversations rooted in faith. My name is Hermela, and we have a couple of guests here with me today.
I am Casis Henok. I serve in Debre Birhan ቅድስት ሥላሴ Church. I think I'm representing long years married person. Thank you for having me.
Hi, my name is Daikon Lucas. I'm just recently married. I'm excited to be here, so let's have a conversation.
And my name is Maraf. I'm engaged, getting married in 2 months.
And so with the people I have here with me today, although they are all in relationships, we're going to be talking about what it looks like to not be in one and what that living in singleness looks like. So a lot of it is going to be talking about courtship and preparing yourself in your singleness, looking at what you need to do to prepare yourself, the prayers, the time that you spend with yourself and your confession father, and all of those things we're going to be covering as you lead up to what it looks like to be in a relationship. Okay, so to start off, I'd like to ask you guys, what does it look like to be in a marriage? What does a Orthodox marriage looks like?
So we can start with what's the purpose of marriage in Orthodoxy. So I would say, according to our church fathers' teaching or according to our belief, marriage or married life is one of the 2 ways that God designed us to live and get to salvation or receive redemption. So there are 2 ways, I said. One is the way where people can choose monastic life, and the other one is married life. And fortunately, Jesus Christ blessed both of them. So he blessed the monastic life when immediately after he got baptized with John, and he blessed the marriage life when he was in Cana of the Galilee. So if we see in general, marriage is basically a way, like it's sanctification and the process where we are going to go to attain redemption or salvation. And in our church teaching, there are 3 reasons for marriage. One is for being, God told to Adam and Eve, go forth and multiply and increase in number. So that's having a lot of children in our marriage. That's one purpose. And the other is flee from sexual immorality. And the other one, and the third one is companionship, the bondage between married people like husband and wife. So that's the reason and the purpose of marriage.
I guess from someone that recently got married, what does that look like for you, or how does that relate to what you've been experiencing so far?
So, for me, it's very recent experience. It's always in the honeymoon phase, but for me, from what I've seen is, it's only, been a very short period of time, but what I've seen now is, especially, going from, singlehood to marriage and everything, I've seen that, when you are, together, when you're one, you're building a house. I've been, in a variety, I've been living with my family. I lived with my brother. Now I'm living with my wife. And even though it's a short period of time, during that time, like I can see that, oh, wow, together we are building a house. We're building a home. This is my family. This is a different thing. So through that, I've seen, something that is really like life-changing. It's beautiful. And then also like, as, I'm learning about being a husband and reading the Bible, reading what Ephesians chapter 5 says, and everything that's in the Bible pushing us in that direction. It's been really a beautiful experience. So it's something different. So, yeah.
I love it. So I guess looking into from a perspective of someone seeking that and looking for that, how does one make sure that they aren't settling and making sure that they're truly selective, but also not being too selective where they end up somewhere that they may not want to be?
Yeah, I can start. I feel like we can describe in 4 stages, I would say. For the first stage would be a romantic stage, that every word comes from your partner is lovely and tasty, and you appreciate and you hear everything is positive, and that is a romantic stage that I would say. And the second stage would be maybe a fighting stage, where you are going to have some disagreement. And people will usually say that a 3D, like difference and disagreement, and basically they have their difficulties. So for example, you may have, of course, the difference because you come from different family background. So that is a fighting stage, that you want to go to a restaurant and you may want to eat injera, and your partner want to eat pasta, and you have to come up with the middle ground, and you have to choose, right? So that's a fighting stage, that you are going to come up with the middle ground instead of having your own like perspective on in most of the cases. And the third stage would be a settling stage that we are talking now. That means you basically know your partner's weaknesses or strength, and what she likes or what he doesn't like, and you kind of have like that settling stage. And that the final stage is the decision stage. That the decision stage will make you like, okay, I can have this person throughout my life, I can live with him or with her. But the settling stage where you are going to have like somehow get to know each other more and know your partners very well before you decide.
I feel like for me, like one of the things that I experienced is trying to deciding, okay, I am not settling. Like these are things I'm not going to, like my non-negotiables, for example. Once you figure out like what you will not settle for, so like aside the obvious, like he has to be Orthodox, he has to be like God-fearing, after all of that, then naturally I think you go to like trying to figure out, okay, there's always going to be better out there. Like you always, like every time like you're in a fight or with your significant other, you're always going to think, okay, like I actually don't have to deal with this. I can go somewhere else, But I think when you make that decision and like kind of decide with your partner, where are we headed? Like what is the goal? What's the purpose of our marriage? Or what's the purpose of our relationship? It's like ultimately to get to heaven. Can we help each other get there? If you have like a goal in place already of like where exactly you're going, it's going to be very easy to settle with that person because it's not for each other you're doing it, it's for God. And once you kind of have that alignment, it becomes much more easier.
Yeah, I think in terms of, the spiritual criteria that we have, I think definitely, we have to keep that. I think in terms of the other criteria that we have, especially when people are in their singlehood, we have to be very, very careful about what kind of criteria we have. I think Murnoff was in with me and a couple of other servants. We took a dating course. And during that dating course, what our teacher did, is he asked everybody, what is everybody's criteria? There were guys and girls in there. He asked everybody, what is their criteria? And it was an honest conversation. People were saying, oh, he has to look like this, she has to look like this, she has to act like this, all these different criterias. And then when you list it out, and at the end, he said, okay, this person that you all listed out does not exist. God did not create this kind of person. So during our singleness, and even what I had to do myself, just like everyone else, is we have to, he said this great quote, we have to divorce the person that we have in our mind, the person that we created in our imagination, and we have to be able to find the person that God has in front of us. That's the problem that a lot of people struggle with. So then what happens is it's easy for us to end up to be thinking that, oh, I'm settling because we have a lot of unnecessary or unneeded criteria. But in reality, we need to really evaluate our criteria and decide what's important for marriage, what is needed for marriage. So, now I have a question for Tewahedo. What is the criteria? What should we look at for marriage? What's important?
So I would say you may start with make sure that God-centered relationship, that is, that's the first one. And I would say you can represent or describe as like a car, a vehicle, let's say, God-centered relationship. So that's the engine of the vehicle, let's say. So you have to make sure that you're on the same faith first. That is basically one of the check marks you have to do. It's very hard to marry and a person without your faith. So that's the first one. Second one, I would say you should have a guidance from a spiritual father. So you can consider that your GPS, that guidance of someone that guide you in your journey. And the third one would be you should have some God words, like you have to have some in pipeline that makes you know about more the relationship or make you reinforce in your spiritual life. That's, we can consider like a gas that feels you like to run that vehicle. And maybe the last one could be basically after you have God in you and after you have a spiritual father and you have an engine, then you have to have you have to maintain your vehicle anyway. So there should be some forgiveness and compassion and love, because even marriage is when you see that we're experiencing how God sacrificed himself for the church. As St. Paul says, it's a resemblance of church and Jesus Christ. So church submits to Jesus Christ and as Jesus Christ loved us. So marriage is basically that's a sanctification process that we experience how God love and sacrifice, and we basically experience that in our journey. So that's maybe the four fundamentals, I would say.
I guess for me, like leading up to that point prior, those non-negotiables that you mentioned, like what were they all valid, first off? And then also, did those non-negotiables change as you began that process of dating, courtship, and like leading up to where you are now?
Like Lucas was saying, whenever I entered that dating course with our teacher, my non-negotiables were like, he has to be 6 feet, he has to be tall, handsome, like all of this, the wildest of the checklists. And then aside all the handsome phenomenon, obviously I also wanted pretty much like very easy when it comes to like cultural differences and understanding how like my life is, and the main concern of like the church is like submit yourself to your husband, and then the husband will love you, that he will give up his life for you. That is something that I think like that changed, that I didn't really take into consideration. Like, is the person like I'm with capable or understands what that looks like? I think that's something that non-negotiable that came later. But aside that, I think my non-negotiables were valid. And thank God, like, I feel like I found it. But outside of that, I think once I realized like the additional non-negotiable through the class, I added it. And I think that's also valid.
So when was the moment that you decided like, okay, this is my partner, my future partner?
I think for me, at a certain point during the courtship process, like, it became obvious for me, to be honest with you. For me, I believe, I full-heartedly believe that my wife is a gift from God. Like, the way that we met and everything, it was, we met at church and we started to getting to know each other. Like, we didn't know each other, through friends or anything like that. We just started getting to know each other. And then through that, we were able to, build a relationship. So, yeah.
I feel like I knew, or like I like decided that, okay, this is the person that I want to marry. It started, of course, like before we started dating. That's where we're headed anyway. So right before, we kind of like, we knew each other. Like back when I was like in high school, we used to serve at Kirana Merat as like Sambat Tamari, but like we didn't really know each other like that. It was just like we serve. And then once we like graduated and I like came back to the church, I think that's when like we met again and we started to actually get to know each other than a hi bye. And then I was like, okay, maybe I can see it. And then whenever I can see it, I think it just all kind of happened really like quickly after. So it happened before we actually started dating that I was like, I think I would marry him. How about you?
Mine could be different because it's 18 years experience back then. Well, mine is a mix of long distance relationship and also at some points in person, because I was in Ethiopia and my wife back then, my girlfriend or my fiance was here. So, it's basically changed to like from like normal conversation or like back then there was no like email or something or text, that's actually hard paper that you have to write down. So that is, so that kind of the content of the letter is gradually changed to relationships. That's how we ended up. So
Can I ask how y'all met in that case?
So we, our families or our parents, we used to live in the same village, in the same area. So basically, we know each other. Our families know each other. So it didn't took us long time to know each other more. That's the biggest advantage. If you have a friend, that friendship will change it to, long-term relationship, being a couple in the future. So having that friend, because you know that your friend, without asking any questions, you basically know his behavior or her behavior. So it's going to be kind of less hard work towards the journey. So
Very cute. I just wanted to know, when did you know that she was the one you wanted to marry?
Oh yeah. Well, I try to evaluate, my values, so what I want to be in the future, what type of person I want to marry. And during our conversation, I asked like, what's my non-negotiable items? This is what I want to be in the future. This is my passion, and I do that kind of, and the same thing. So most of our values and core values, like the dogmas, what you can say, the canons or canonas can change anytime. Means, once you have that checked, the basic items, the fundamentals, then fortunately I was in college back then in Ethiopia, and I was taking a pre-marriage or pre-relationship course. Fortunately, that helped me a lot, what to ask and what type of item I need to identify before I commit to myself in that relationship. So
Surprised they had that 18 years ago.
I know, 18 plus years ago, yes.
Was that something that you intentionally did because you felt like that person was, like your current wife was the person for you, or was that you like barely like starting like, oh, I'm ready for marriage, let me see what that looks like? What made you decide to take that course?
That course is just a course that should be given to every like campus college students. This is through Maverick Urdusan, so we take all those courses. So towards the senior year, we took that pre-marriage and pre-relationship course. That's a must that you have to take in the senior year. So that helped me a lot for sure. Yeah.
I did want to go back a little bit to something that you mentioned. You said one of the criteria was someone that is of the faith. So for people that may not be on that same page, is there any room for that to be a negotiable? Like, is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea to seek outside? What does that look like?
So you mean if a person seeking another, like his partner or her partner, not in the same faith? Mm-hmm. So that's basically misses the principle of marriage, especially when you talk about Christian marriage. That's the base of the foundation is Christ, Christianity. That the husband and the wife will become like, they will be one, then they will make union. And that's a resemblance, as I said, with the church and Christ. And if there is no like that fundamental Christianity or Christ in the middle, it is very hard to start marriage without the same faith. So it's not really recommended in our church. Though that's maybe a question, if you ask me if someone is seeking, that's no, that's the answer. But if they are already married, then they need to discuss about it. They need to, seek and see a spiritual father, go to the church. We're not saying they're not husband and wife, but they can amend it, because Christian marriage is holy, holy marriage. So that's how that holiness is based on Christianity or Christ. So.
do you have any advice for people that are in that dating phase, like that are questioning or like that might be struggling with that, to kind of guide them or give them clarity on what they should do next?
Correct. They need to have those, as I said, those fundamentals should be checked first. Otherwise, down the road, there will be a lot of issues. Divorce will be the first thing that will come to their mind if they don't take care of those fundamentals. So being the same faith is fundamental for Christians to get married. That's the must. And basically, after that, all those stuff like communication and common background. Background may be different, but common values, I would say, or understand each other's values, respect each other's values, and accept what he likes or he doesn't, or all other stuff will come later. But I would encourage those fundamentals to be checked before they committed to this strong relationship.
I love it. I guess, okay. So, question for the married or recently married man. What changed for you once y'all got married, from the courtship fiance phase to now living together, married?
I think the biggest thing, like I talked about earlier, was building a house, but like building a home, building a family. But also now, one thing I'm starting to learn and realize, this is a lesson for me. So one thing I'm starting to learn and realize is the impact of everything like I do or she does is huge, because we're both going on a journey together. So it's not just, me, or it's not just her. It's like we are literally walking together, and whatever, even if it's something I think, back then when I was single, something I think is small or something she thought was small, has a big impact on like what we're doing. We have to both be on the same plan, same vision, same everything. So I think the biggest thing for me that has changed is starting to think not as, a single person, but as one that are two people, just like the church teaches. So trying to figure that out and navigate that is, I would say for me, that's like the biggest transition and biggest change that someone could do from their singlehood to marriage. So, yeah.
How is it waking up in the morning?
It's always, it takes a while to get used to, because, first you're single, you're by yourself, and all of a sudden there's like someone next to you. It's like, what? So it's a different experience. I mean, everything in the house is different. In terms of just every little aspect, like even when, like, for example, if I come home from work first or she comes home from work first, like there's a home there. There's a home vibe. Like no matter what, like even if there's like, nothing in the house or whatever, one of us are going to be like, oh, hey, should I pick up something? Should I get food? There's always someone there to care for you. And it's like the most beautiful thing in the world. It's, I've been single for a while, so it's different. So it's a very different, but it's a very beautiful thing. Like to have someone there, like literally your rib next to you, making sure that, hey, are you okay? And then me trying to make sure, she okay, trying to figure out, making sure that we're both, taking care of each other, working together to try to at least, build some kind of semblance or some kind of warmness in the home is one of the most beautiful things about marriage. So, I mean, I feel like I'm selling marriage right now, but it is. It's so beautiful. I've seen, I've seen my parents in their marriage, and I've seen, close family members, friends and families in their marriage. And I've always wondered, why do they say get married? And then now, like, I'm starting to see it. So it's very beautiful.
That transition from graduation to, okay, when you're getting married, you understand. I love it.
Yeah.
I want to ask, based off of what you were saying earlier with that one non-negotiable that entered, I don't want to misquote you, so you might need to say it again, but as like from a guy's perspective, like that was something that you were seeking. Was that something that you were constantly thinking about? Like what did that look like for you, seeking someone that, I guess, not submit to you, but like for you to feel like sacrifice, like you were willing to sacrifice for that person? Was that something that was constantly on your mind?
Yeah, no, that's a very beautiful question. I think the biggest thing that people tend to miss when they are, in the courtship phase is how does the other person treat their family members, treat their brothers, treat their sisters, treat their fathers and mothers. Because what I like realized pretty quick is the people who are like closest, like if you're trying to evaluate or trying to court a girl, like, or a guy, who's the person that's closest to them? It's their father, it's their mother, it's their brother and their sister. So how do they treat them? So then by seeing that and seeing how they treat their siblings and their family members, you're able to evaluate how are they going to treat me? So then when you go into the house, when both of you guys are working together to build that house and build a home, then you're able to see, okay, like now they're bringing, the beautiful things about the beautiful traits that they have in their family. If they're a good family person, then they're most likely, God willing, they're able to be a good husband, a good wife. But, there's obviously a huge learning curve into that as well. But at least they have like the basic skills. So that's one thing I've noticed. So for me, that was a non-negotiable. They really had to be a good, warm family person outside of obviously the spiritual aspect.
I love it. Now, I guess we can get a little bit into the courtship portion of things. Just explain from your perspectives personally that what y'all experienced and then what courtship meant to you prior and as you were going through it. What was it like?
Well, I didn't do any courtship. I spent most of my time very like, I didn't really understand initially his pursuit in me. So like trying to like court me and then like let me know that he's interested and to see if I was interested. I was more like in the phase of like, marriage is scary. Like I'm not ready. I'm like 25. I'll see you when I'm 30. Like I don't need this right now. And then I think like through the fact that we became friends, or it was very friendly, like it was like constant calls of like, hey, how are you? You're not calling me. Like, how's it going? Da, da, da. And I felt like through that, just being friends kind of made it easier for me. If I saw it at first as like, okay, like I'm young, I don't need to like end my life yet. I still want to like, I have so much I want to do for my family. I have so much I want to do for myself. I have to like, but I was thinking of like, there's so much I want to do by myself that I'm not ready to think about anybody else outside of that. So during the courtship process, I was very like closed about it. But then I think like through just like being a friend and like being like, I'm not trying to like stop any of that. I'm trying to help it, I think that kind of like geared my courtship process to the point where it's like, okay, like I'm inviting it now. Like I'm for it. Like, and then it became like we were talking about marriage, we were heading there, but it didn't feel for me like because I was kind of scared of it. It didn't feel as scary. It just felt like two friends achieving something. And then I think that's what the courtship for me, why it felt better than just like, here's a gift, here's some flowers, and then I'm going to make you my wife. Like it didn't feel like that, It just felt like, I don't know, a journey. So that's my courtship experience.
That's beautiful. My courtship experience, well, I mean, like the first thing, like, we did even when we first hung out and started spending time with each other, neither of us were trying to like kind of what you're saying, like impress each other with like flowers, gifts and everything. I think a lot of times, especially since, we grew up on like romance movies and everything, we expect, oh, it has to be like this. But really when you look at it, like you have to start from a real standpoint, from being a real person. Who is the person that's sitting across from you from the table? Someone who's real, and you have a conversation, you go from there. I think one of the most important things that we did during our courtship is we kept it between me and her and God, meaning that during our courtship process, we didn't tell anybody that we were in a courtship process. No one knew we were in a courtship process. It was very like low key. Nobody had any idea. Even to the point where I would drive, an hour, 2 hours, because she went to school, far away. I know Isis was talking about a long distance relationship. This is semi long distance relationship, but the reason why I wanted to do that and make sure to do that to keep everything low key is during that time, I'm just getting to know her and she's just getting to know me. So we didn't want anybody else's opinion during that process. It's very, especially for her and I, we both knew that it could be very dangerous because, because I truly believe that, the way we met was random. So I believe that she was a gift from God. So why am I letting someone else, a human being, get in the way of God's work? So it was just me, her, God, and I was, willing to drive. She was willing to drive because we wanted to make sure that no one else interfered in that relationship. Because, even though friends and family, they mean well, they always mean well, but sometimes they can give advice from, a perspective where it can hurt your relationship. So then once we were done with the courting process, and then we started introducing each other's, to our family, friends, and everything, I could say with full confidence, oh no, I know how she is. I know exactly who she is. We had all the serious conversations and everything. We had a clear intention. She knew my intention. I knew her intention. Everything was crystal clear. So then after, we finished our courtship process and then introduced, each other to everybody's family and things like that. Like, even I'm not saying anything was said, but even if something was said, I would have been like, no, I know her. Like, there's nothing. It's okay. So
Did surprise us with an engagement.
yeah, they can testify like more than me. Like,
it was the best surprise though. We loved it.
Yeah, we loved it.
Yeah, I think going in that direction, I know it's like extremely challenging to be able to keep it low key. Like the distances that I had to drive, to keep it low key was hard. But being able to make that sacrifice now, seeing it, because we started, just me and her, and then now, once you're married, it's just me and her. So, starting off like that and then continuing like that, like it's just us. Like I don't have any issues. I'm clear-headed.
It's actually very hard to keep it low key. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I think even for me and my fiance, like everyone knew even before I did. Like people were assuming that we were dating before we started dating, just because like either we looked like we got along or whatever it may be. Before even I started thinking of seeing him in that way, people were the ones coming and influencing me. They're like, are you and him dating? Are you guys together? And I was like, no, like, why would you think that? And then, so it was so hard to keep it low key just because y'all walk in together, leave together. People just have their influence. But I think because I couldn't be as low key and people are so concerned on how your life is, for me, it just became like, how well does he mesh into my life? Which is what I said. Like, I think for my thing, I didn't want to start a new life. I want it to be like a smooth transition. So like, how well does he get to, like, how well does he interact with my family, my friends, the people that are important with me? And then seeing how well that interaction was is how I think my decision came. Because as much as I wanted to be a low-key person, it just couldn't work.
It's extremely challenging. Like, yeah, it's very, very challenging.
And y'all were at the same church too, so I bet.
I had no idea about Lucas. He's surprised.
Girl. Yeah. I guess for some people that might not know, can we talk a little bit about what exactly, like the definition behind courtship, what that looks like? Cassius, if you could also give us your take on that.
So mine was, of course, a long distance relationship was, and as I told you, was a lot of phone calls or letters and stuff that we need to try to communicate as much as we can. But one thing that I took, that pre-marriage or pre-relationship course that I took, helped me, was I was making sure that I need to be equipped with my spiritual knowledge. I know that I should be spiritually, emotionally, and financially ready to start the relationship or to get married. And I tried, that time I was basically seeing what's going to be the future, what type of family I'm going to establish, what type of person I will be. So I was making myself ready spiritually and emotionally and financially. And I was basically taking some courses and reading books and try to make myself, even I had a confession father when I was in college as well, and I was telling to my spiritual children one of my experiences in my, like the first time when I confessed, I told him everything about my relationship and everything, and and I took Holy Communion, like I was praying about the relationship. And when we came, look, I was in Arbamich, and when we came from Arbamich to Addis Ababa, basically the bus was wiggling, and it was everybody was like screaming and yelling and what's going on. And two things came to my mind. One is I'm in a relationship, and I was like, I'm afraid I don't want to miss this, I don't want to die, But the other thing, I confessed, I took Holy Communion. I was like, yeah, I'll go to heaven. So there are some challenges over there, but I would say mine is different than yours, but that's my experience.
I did want to ask Lucas a follow-up question. So with the way y'all went about your courtship process, like kind of like the sacrifices with the driving and like keeping it as okay as you did, how did that translate into now your marriage? How have those qualities transferred over now?
Yeah, I think one thing we did during our engagement is, obviously before the engagement, you start introducing, your spouse to folks and everything. So you start beginning that process, and then during the engagement, it heats up more, wedding planning, everything like that. So then when it came to marriage, now, because we started like, it's just me and her, we have like, we try to have like really clear communication in terms of, it's only been a few months, but, we try to have clear communication in terms of like everything that, we have on our mind, have on our hearts. It's very clean, because like, we don't, like, if anybody were to say anything, if anything were to happen or something, somebody would, a lot of times when you start, you have your marriage and it's in the limelight, people make comments. So when those kind of things happen, like, we have no doubts with each other. So now when it's just me and her, we don't have, there's nothing that can like, break, that kind of thing. So we have like full, confidence in the marriage and everything. So it's, it's been a short period of time, but I think starting alone with you, God, and a confession, Father, is so important. If you're able to do it, it can really clear everything up, and that's how you build a house. Because once you get married, you close the door, and then it's just you and her. So, you have to be able to, live the life of you and her.
Okay. Just a little bit more about what is courtship from the church's perspective? What does that entail? What does it mean? What is the definition?
So I would say that's maybe the gets into like going to the actual marriage, right? So that's where you basically, before you start driving a car, you have to do some training. That's kind of before you're in the vehicle, you have to experience, with limits, what's the behavior behind and what's the values and stuff. So we can even describe it as a journey that you may, like, your end goal is, of course, kingdom of heaven, right? So that you started the journey, but imagine you're in a road that, sometimes you have to drive in high speed, like 50 miles per hour, 60, and sometimes you have to go slow, like 30 miles per hour. Sometimes you may stop at some point and make other cars, pass. Sometimes you have to yield. Sometimes you may face a roundabout. You may talk around the bush to express, your feelings. There's sometimes uphills and downhills. So this is a journey that you will experience, and in the process you will feel peace. Maybe, that's what I felt like when I decided. In the process, at some point you will feel peace, and you feel like you're doing what God is expecting from you. Are you doing like as the Bible or our spiritual fathers and as our church teaching tells you to do, or are you missing the point? Are you partying or going somewhere else and like something that doesn't help you for your future relationship, or are you going with the manual that we have, our Bible, our church teaching, our spiritual fathers experience, all those? So you can tell this relationship will be successful or not during even your courtship, basically. So you will evaluate yourself. Okay, are we doing good? Am I feeling peace when I talk to her, talk to him? Am I doing the right thing, what church telling me to do? If it's in that right path, you feel like, okay, this is going a right journey. That's how church define and make you like to decide that, the decision stage, after settling stage or the decision stage, you will evaluate all this. One thing we should, even I had experience, was you cannot fully examine a person. You cannot fully know him at all until, as you said, you open the door, get in, close the door. That's how the real life, the real identity will come out. You know what I mean? You may have some dating or some courtship, I would say. You may meet at a restaurant or somewhere at the church with the netala and everything. So, the atmosphere or the environment guide you what to do. You have to respect the waitress and you have to impress your, future spouse, and everything is lined up. So, you may see yourself in the mirror 3-4 times before you get out. There may be some makeup. I don't know. There are some stuff behind, but when you close the door and you're here, two of you, that the reality comes. So that's why I previously said, if you check marked on those fundamentals, those things after you close the door, if that person's, you're supposed, I was lying, I am, I'm not in the same phase, that's a different story, you know what I mean? But if you figure out, if you notice something, oh, you shouldn't tell me that she like this or she, doesn't like this, but everything you will learn more, you will start more compromising stuff. Like you will put something on the table and discuss about that item, then you will basically, if it's Christian relationship, and you will have some guidance and stuff. So that's how I see it and how the church sees it.
So like you personally, for now that you guys have been married and lived with your spouses, whenever something negative, like you have a negative challenge or something that happens between you guys, are there like practices in place, or if you want to get like more detailed of like what exactly like is a challenge that you face, and then like do you set up meetings every week and you're like, let's talk about what happened this week, or do you guys like have any like coping mechanisms, or like what is the common theme of how you guys resolve your issues?
You want to start? Okay, so I would say, of course, there should be some disagreements or something that you will try to express your perspective, and she will try to explain her perspective. It comes, of course, because of our background. We've been with our families for 30 plus years or 20 plus years before you start a relationship. So you have 20 plus years experience with your family and few years experience with a spouse, But through time, I would say marriage is basically an institution or an institute that you will never graduate from. So basically, you will learn a lot of things through the process. There could be some pop-up quizzes and surprise exams in the middle, and you have to be ready about that. So when in a courtship, of course, you should think about, okay, what type of institution that I need to join? What type that you have to make sure that you have your dreams and that institute will fulfill your dreams and stuff. But after you get in, you have to know that that's the institute that you will never graduate from. So you will learn a lot through time. So in the process, it might be, my own experience, things arise. And honestly, I read a lot of books about relationship and marriage, and I try to come up with some solution. I don't know, is that men or women is this basically solution maker, or someone who, do you agree that women is? Okay, so yeah, but we try to talk about the item. We may not personalize it first, or you do that, you do this, but we may, so why this happens, or what's your perspective, and then I will start saying my feelings and her feelings, and we will come up with a common background. Sometimes she wins, sometimes I win, sometimes no one wins, and you may not talk for an hour or two, and maybe a day or 2 days, but eventually, as long as you exit and come back to the entrance ramp again temporarily, that's fine. The bad thing is if you exit and turn around, that's the dangerous part. But of course, there are a lot of disagreements, but we try to handle it as much as we can. of course, there's a spiritual father as well that you may have some guidance. But one thing I want to mention here is I wish I knew there is such thing called Christian counseling, or this other professions that help you out. Because I really advise this generation, I really advise you take advantage of counselors or therapists. There, you may take like 2-3 sessions. It doesn't hurt, but that will give you, because it is something that you are going to in that you didn't have any experience from, right? It is another world that you have to go in. So as I said, you have to have a training before you drive a car. Same thing, you have to know something about marriage before you get in and have trouble with. So
while you were speaking, I was just shaking my head because it's all like very true. Like I've just seen everything recently, and the way you explained it was perfect. I think from what I've seen is like you said, everything is a pop quiz. Like I don't believe in like I don't think meetings are good. I think like whatever something pops up, like it's just good just to talk about it right then and there if you can. I don't want to like wait or delay or anything like that. I think one thing is like I feel like especially in the last like few weeks, like I've been realizing and reflecting on the few months I've been married, and one thing I noticed was like I'm always learning. Like I thought, after we were married, I'm like, oh, I know my wife pretty well. Like I think, I figured everything out. There's so much more, and even from her, and she's learning about me, and we're learning, about like how we handle different situations, how we are in the house, and everything. So I think just trying to understand that like this is really a learning process. Like there's no like you can have a few tools that may have helped you when you were in your singlehood, and you may be able to apply them to your marriage. But from what I've seen is the way you handle your brother, the way you handle your sister, the way you handle your parents, it can kind of help, but it's a completely different beast. Like well, the way I think of it is like everything before marriage is like preschool, and now you just went to college. Like so it's not bad. I don't think of it as a bad way. It's just like you have to have like a very clear head and a different mindset from what I've seen. I think just like understanding that everything's a learning experience, and you have to be really humble. I think even for myself, I thought like, oh, I took a dating course. I'm in the church. I've read a few stories in the Bible. Maybe, I think I have a good idea about what marriage is going to be. I might have a fighting chance, I might be okay. And then, once you get in, then you realize, wow, there's a lot to learn. Like this is literally like you said, an institute that you'll never graduate from. So I think it's just going to be, it's a learning process. But the biggest thing is just like whenever there's an issue, like just don't wait.
Yeah. By the way, I really commend that I learned recently. Take that disagreement or something, the issue, as an opportunity to express your love, to express your compassion. As God loves our church. You know what I mean? That's whenever some things raise up, some issue pop up. If you take it as a challenge, it's going to be a challenge. If you take it as an opportunity, then it's how God tests you too. Your spouse also tests you, because in a good time, everybody is every day is Fasika, of course. Everyone is enjoying, but you will be tested on that difficult time. That when that issue raises, that's how you will be tested. Use that opportunity to help your spouse. Show your love and compassion, and see how you're basically experiencing what the church expects from you.
Was that a transition, a mental switch that you had to do to go from, we're figuring out this problem versus?
Correct. That's how, if you, let's say, as a Christian, if you're single, you'll basically explore what the single Christian should look like, right? If you're in that, if you try to use your time wisely and equip yourself with spiritual items. When you get engaged, then you will start, looking for books and resources, what the engaged spiritual person should act, right? And when you get married, if you not adding some spiritual knowledge in you, like, okay, I'm married, so I need to have some more knowledge about what a spiritual married person need to do as a husband. What should I do? So I start looking for resources and books. And one thing I recently noticed or learned was that I need to take that issue as an opportunity to make my wife happy, my God happy, and in my community happy. Like, use that opportunity. That's a challenge, and change it to opportunity. Basically, you're nagging your head. So.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to look at conflict, because like with that kind of lens, then you're able to reconcile quicker, and everything is like you're building a home, you're building a house versus something else. So
yeah, you start like becoming conscious about it whenever something happen, or if you hear some word from her or from him, you start, okay, how can I change this conversation to another level or another like positive appearance? Then you'll start looking for it. Then you'll build up your experience, and it will become like natural after that. Yeah. And let me give you one experience that I have. I mean, not mine, but I heard when we had a Friday ceremony we have in Selassie, right? So one of the ladies, she was pulling the chairs, and when she started pulling the tables, I was like, you don't have to pull the chairs or the tables. There are like men coming, so you can pull up the chairs, but wait for the tables, so they will come and take it. As if you don't know me. What she said, I try to have my fence done, and I try to hire other people, and they told her that is $8,000 to have their like her fence done. So she was like, no way. Then she watched YouTube how to do fence, basically. So she said, I was in it. Like, she dig a hole, and all the fences, she made it like, so she said in the process, her husband was opening the window saying, hey, my love, I think that should be somewhat straight or something. So she was laughing, She didn't, she was not mad about it. She was like, that's how my husband is. So it's seamless, like it's natural. So she knows her husband. She doesn't complain about he doesn't help me or he didn't do anything, but she's done that, and she make fun of it that he opens that window and say, it doesn't look straight, but she was like, okay, I got it, She did it. So eventually you will be like that. You seamlessly, you will basically know, oh, okay, he didn't do that. He didn't pick up the plate today because of this. You didn't like prejudge, because once you know him, usually I will start or I will even recommend, because I see it in my life as well. If you see something wrong, don't start with judgment. Like, it could be something happen that person, or your spouse do that time. Or if someone tells you, or if you see something wrong, you may tell yourself first, okay, my spouse is not like that. My husband or my wife is not like that. There should be something that thing needs to be done. Then you will start with that positive attitude, or positive judgment. Then you will ask questions. So, why that happened, or did you notice that? Then when you get the answer, if the answer was, okay, that I put it, so what? Then the disagreement starts when that person did it deliberately. But if you understand that was not deliberate, or that was not intentional, then, you start with positive attitudes, and everything will be seamless. So I really encourage not to act immediately when you see things wrong. So
yeah, I think that's a troubling issue, especially during like courtship. We don't realize that we're just getting to know someone. Like, this is a completely new person. So as soon as we see something negative pop up, we want to react. We want to jump. The biggest temptation is like haste, rushing, and instead of trying to take action or accuse the person. And I think that's how a lot of relationships like end prematurely versus exploring the person, like taking a step back and thinking, oh, okay, where's this person coming from? Trying to understand their background instead of, just taking action. Because I think even, especially on social media, the things that are pushed now is like, oh, okay, you need to take action. Like, we can't settle. We can't have this criteria. We're always trying to take action and move on. And I think that's very dangerous, especially in the courtship stages, because I've seen it with friends and other folks, and everybody's rushing because they think they can find greener pastures.
And I just have a question for the singles, Tianj. Like now in your phase of singleness, like what are you actively like trying to learn what it's like to be single? Or just like tell me a little bit more of like what are you trying to like get married or like enjoying like the peacefulness of single?
Let me answer calmly. I mean, just seeing, I guess, okay, so back, like the fact that we've had so many weddings in Dallas, like glory be to God. It's very, very beautiful and it's very inspiring, and I see myself wanting that. And so I can't say, I appreciate this time in singleness. I think it's very much needed for me to kind of figure out who I am, what I want, and like learning from people like this, like getting that advice. But yeah, I mean, it's been nice, and I'm excited for what's to come, and I'm not as scared of it as I was before. I think like how you were saying, like it can wait, that kind of has passed, and I think that came with a level of maturity and kind of seeking out what kind of things that I would want from a spouse outside of the non-negotiables of like Orthodox and all of that stuff, like what I actually want and what I can provide myself as well. Those are definitely things that I'm trying to like be conscious about as I progress through it.
That's great, because that's the only advice that I would have to myself as a single person is like you mentioned, like not being so scared of it to the point where now when I'm about to get married, I'm like, I could have done this 5 years ago. Like, why was I so scared? And like, I wouldn't think that I was like blocking blessings, but now that I'm here, I was like, it's not that bad. Like, this is kind of nice, you know? So yeah, I'm glad that you're there already.
I mean, thank you guys for the advice. I mean, like, it's definitely nice seeing people older than me, like being able to like look at them and be like, wow, they were where I was and now they're at the next step. And so it makes it less scary. So I appreciate it. But I do have a question now that you mention it. With like, was that a quick, I keep asking, like, was it a quick transition? Was it something over time? Like, how did you progress through that from being scared to not?
I think it took the person, not me, to like get me through the scaredness of it, because like I said, like I was kind of over the whole courtship that looks like the romance comedies manamin. But I like where the whole like the courting with the flowers and like being nice, like I just felt like it was all fake. And so for me, I think that's what made me, I was like, it's not really like this, so like can we like not, you know? And so I think when the person came where it was like they were just like very casual, very real about it, I think the person made it easier for me to where I wasn't so scared anymore. But I think if like me myself, like looking back, I think if I maybe just stuck around like and just kind of understood, okay, like yeah, accept the flowers, accept the good, and then like we still get to know the person. You shouldn't just be like, nah, not now. Just like getting to know somebody, because at the end of the day it will wear off the whole like I don't know what it's called, like romance. Yeah, that part, like the honeymoon phase. The honeymoon phase.
There you go.
No, it's not.
Like, you know what I mean? Like it once it wears off, and like I still like it. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm still a girl that likes to be like flattered and stuff. But I think it just like I wanted to see the person more. So I think me by myself, I can't make the decision of not being scared. Like I don't think I was capable of getting there. But when the right person came along, I think they kind of help to just make you like, it's not that bad. We'll be all right. Like we're just helping each other get to heaven, and this is the process that we're going to go, like the journey that we're going to take. And then you help me, I help you, partnership on earth, partnership in heaven. Like it's just, you know what I mean? They make it easier. So yeah, it's the person.
Oh, that's really nice. I think a lot of especially, you know, when you were talking about the romance stuff, it reminded me a lot of guys, they end up in the romance trap. They think that like, oh, I have to be, you know, over the top romantic, all these gestures to try and impress the girl, versus like, you know, what I've seen work with, you know, numerous friends who are engaged or married or everybody. What really works is a genuine approach. And, you know, that's what we don't see in movies. In movies, you see the flowers. In IG, you see the nice car. You know, some guy who rents like a nice car. You know, we have to have, it has to be, you know, you have to have 6 figures, 7 figures, all these kind of superficial things. But really, what really counts is just being that genuine person. That's what makes it beautiful, and that's how, from what I've seen, from my experience, you're able to really court someone and then have a beautiful relationship.
Because that's what you're left with at the end of it. I mean, like, the money's going to go away eventually. So that's very true.
And I also heard that the statistic shows, I'd say 69% of the things you may not maybe solve those issues. You have to choose. You have to live with it, or there are some things that the spouse can adjust when you get in. So it's basically, as much as you explore the person or know the person as much as you can, and after that, when you get in to marriage, then you will compromise. And I don't think you need to make sure that you know that person completely, and it's not gonna happen at all.
A little shift in our conversation. So with going back a little bit to courtship, when did y'all incorporate your spiritual fathers into those conversations? How soon or how late did y'all tell your spiritual fathers, like, hey, there's special someone I want you to meet? What did that conversation look like, and what was the reaction, I guess?
The reaction is funny. I shared with my confession father, like, I want to say 5 months in after we started dating, because I was just like, there's like this saying where like ያልተዘጋጀ ምግብ አይቀርብም kind of thing. So I wanted to be like sure myself, like, okay, like once I tell my spiritual father, like this is kind of it, and so I think like 5 months in, whenever I told my spiritual father, he just kind of like, I know, like I was like, I was over here stressing, trying to figure out how I'm gonna tell him, but it was very easy. And then they just kind of gave me advice of like, you take your time. I just wanted you kind of to do it on your own, but yeah, like I know kind of thing. So it was very easy for me.
That's nice. I think for me, it was kind of in the same mindset as enough. Like I wanted to, when I was ready and when things were kind of settled and I knew her and everything. I think the biggest thing that we can get from our confession father outside of their advice is also their prayers, because during that courtship time, it's also like it's a testing time. There's going to be a lot of there could be even though it's a lot of it's a honeymoon phase, it doesn't take a lot to have a bump on the road or have something happen to where something that's beautiful turns into something else. So my thing was, I really wanted my confession father to pray on our behalf, pray for our relationship, making sure that God is guiding us instead of my thoughts or her thoughts, because our vision is bad. Like we really have bad vision if it's just me choosing. That's why when we were talking earlier, I really had to like delete all the criteria from my brain about like, oh, what kind of person should my wife be? Because all the criteria we get is from the outside world. So even in my personal prayer life, I really tried to incorporate scripture to try to figure out, how do I find a good wife? Where's that virtuous wife? Where's my crown? Where's my jewel? And then on top of that, how can I attempt to be a good husband? Attempt to be, practicing that in my courtship. So it's really challenging to be able to find that. So it was a mix of, also having my confession father pray for me, but just trying to, have other people pray for me, having other people intercede for me to be able to pray, because there's so many different bumps and so many different things that could happen during the courtship process.
Yeah, that's the advantage we have, because we're Christian in the church community, that we have confession father and church Sunday school brothers and sisters, and even we can ask married couples that had some experience than us. And I think we should get that opportunity, that advantage, and we can have that resources, church and that Sunday school, OTYD, and there are now married people are coming, so we can ask questions, right? The singles can ask questions on married people. So I encourage to ask. So I also involved my spiritual father when I started that courtship. Yeah, even though it's a distance relationship, I learned with my fiance back then. She was also discussing with her spiritual father as well.
So with courtship, how does that differ from dating? What is the difference? Is there a difference?
I think it's a term that we use maybe in our church, I would say, because uh, dating is something that you may take it as sometimes as a fun or just try and see a couple of days, or whenever you move to some place, okay, I need to have someone to date and pass time. I'm lonely and I'm trying to figure out a way to pass my time. It's not kind of like a serious starting point, but courtship, I would say it has some spiritual package in it, saying, okay, if I start this relationship, I need to see further what's the next step would be. Then you will think about as a spiritual, you'll think of as a spiritual person and what's the next step is, and you're not taking that, or you're not supposed to maybe have two different people in the same time, but dating, maybe I try this person. And I think that concept, if you say dating actually, but courtship is something you start the journey, you're expecting positive, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's how I understand it.
Yeah, I think even courting, it has some intentionality baked into it. I think, when we talk about dating, it's just something that's, kind of up in the air, I think even Proverbs chapter 5, verse 9, it says, we shouldn't give our time to the cruel one, meaning we shouldn't give our time or our energy to something that's doesn't have any intentionality in it. So when we go into courtship, I think, or dating, a lot of folks, even within the church, they fall into the trap of just going to a relationship just for fun, especially when people are in their younger 20s, just for fun, we'll see what happens. And then you end up spending so many years, in an empty relationship that doesn't have a direction. And that's like so dangerous. Courtship, I think it has a beautiful direction. Even in our church, from what we learned from our church fathers, it has a timeline where, usually if things go well, as long as there's no travel issues or illness or anything, our church encourages us to be able to court each other for 2 years, and then after that, then you're gonna move on. That's the maximum amount of time, because we don't want people to go into a directionless relationship without any intentionality. So I think a lot of folks, they fall into that trap of just being in an unintentional relationship where it doesn't have any goal, it doesn't have any direction, just for fun. They're like, why not? And I think that's encouraged by our culture, on social media. Why not just, go out on a date, get a free meal, even kind of thing, which is, when you think about it now, when I think about it as a married person, I'm like, that's insane. But, for other folks, when they look in that lens, it's just, oh, it's just a meal. What's the problem? They don't see that intention.
I'm not gonna lie, I understood it as like courting is like initial steps, and then dating is like the second step, and then engaged, and then married is how I understood it. But I never really got too into about like the details of the phase names. I just understood it as like initially, like you get courted, which in my opinion is like, you're showing interest is being shown, but you're not really sure where it's headed or what it actually is, if it's going to die down. Is it just like you like each other because you see each other, you're attracted? And then dating is like an intentional decision that just made of boyfriend and girlfriend. And then once the boyfriend and girlfriend happens, it's like, okay, we need to figure out like where we headed. When do we see timeline for marriage? Do you need to finish school? Do I need to finish school? Whatever, start actually planning towards what marriage would look like. And then the wedding, and then and then it goes that way is how I understood it.
And even to add on, even from my personal experience, my wife, I never called her my girlfriend. Like, I always thought you're going to be my wife to be, or my fiance, because I always had that intention. So even like I joked around, like she's like, oh, you never gave me the title. You never let me be your girlfriend. I'm like, you're not my girlfriend. We're going to get married. Wow, so yeah, it is kind of cute. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's cute. It's cute. But like, it's having that kind of intentionality. For me, I think even for her, if she were to speak, it just brings so much like peace and like comfort. Like, okay, we're going on a direction, and like I know we're going on a direction, so it's fine. Like we're gonna see what happens. We're gonna evaluate. We're gonna take everything calmly, but we're on an intention and we have a direction. So
In the courting phase or like dating, whenever you're like deciding to like get with someone and this is the person you're going to marry, I think it's a very important, like you said, like intentionality, because like sometimes you can be asked for like, oh, let's go grab this meal, like there's a new restaurant that just opened, and sometimes you'll go not knowing, oh, like I don't, like in my head I'm like, okay, a restaurant's just opened, we're gonna go eat, but like that other person is thinking something else. I think it's very important to be very direct with your intentions. Like, are you really asking this person because the new restaurant opened, or are you looking for something else? I think being direct is very important, and we're lacking that a little bit, not just like in our generation, but I think like in general, people are like more afraid to be direct with their intention. And if I think things are just very clear, like the reason why I'm bringing you this flower is not because you're sick, it's because I like you. Or the reason why I want you to go try this restaurant is not because it opened, it's because I like you. And like just kind of being forward, so one, you're not wasting people's time, and then you are also not confused going into something. So I think intentionality is very important. But yeah.
Definitely. Sorry for the pause. Okay, so Assis, you had brought this up a little bit earlier, and I kind of want to go back to it in regards to counseling, marriage counseling. Obviously, we're very blessed within our church to have spiritual fathers that even once you're married, you go seek them. But also in regards to like counseling within the world, is that something that you would recommend to couples to seek out, or just stick to with the spiritual fathers? Is there a difference what they can provide for the couple at all?
I would say it depends on the situation, but let's say you can have a spiritual father, you can have a confession father, or a counselor. That counselor could be a father or a professional. But if it is a counselor, as you're Christian, you have to search for Christian counselor, right? Instead of like normal counselor, because there are now a lot. But the church offer, of course, spiritual fathers. There are some fathers who basically took like counseling courses, and they can do both. But your confession father should not be maybe your spiritual father or your counselor. You know what I mean? So you may go and confess, and you discuss with your confession father with like a spiritual aspect of your life. You repent, you confess, you take your canons and you do, and that's one part. And if you have another father in that church that you can take advantage of counseling, that's good. If not, if the level is higher, and your spiritual father, confession father should refer you to go to other professionals, because there may be some issues with mental related issues that spiritual father or confession father couldn't solve it. So the church should allow, and of course our church of course allow, that you can go ahead and take advantage of other counselors or professionals as well. So I really encourage, especially on marriage or relationship, there are plenty, right? So if you didn't get like the right person, and there are a lot of Christian counselors, so you can have that from Coptic Church or other Oriental churches.
I guess now going back another step backwards for those of us in relationships. So we talked about courtship, but now going back into your time in singleness, what did that look like for you guys? How intentional were you with that time? When did it become intentional?
I'll go first. So I think in terms of it becoming intentional, I remember when I first started coming back to church in my early 20s, after a few years of getting settled in spiritual life and trying to pursue God and living a sacramental life. At that point, I was thinking in my head, I have my spiritual life is, I guess, stable. I'm still growing, obviously, but it's stable. And then, in terms of work, things are going okay. And then at that point, I remember it was a few years ago before I met my wife, and I thought, oh, I'm ready. I'm stable. I'm looking now. And then I was wondering, I was waiting. And, it felt like a long time. And I was wondering, why is it taking so long? And one thing I realized, and I think especially even especially a lot of our young men, our brothers in Christ, they fall into this trap where they think that, oh, I'm spiritually ready and I'm, financially ready, why can't I find my wife? And then one thing I realized now that, I finished everything, one thing I realized is that there's a lot of growth to happen that you don't see. I remember, like, if it was a few years ago where I met my wife, I wouldn't be the same person I am now. There's a lot of spiritual maturity. There's a lot of emotional maturity, things like that. So, and when we go into the preparedness of, someone's singlehood, how they should handle that, I think one of the most important things is having a very clear head, like understanding that everything you got fed from the outside world has to be cleared up. You might get like a lot of bad habits from even your parents, even your parents or your older brother or older friends. They may have fed you like things that are, bad ideas. Like, maybe we shouldn't be pursuing people based off of looks. Maybe we shouldn't be pursuing people based off of degrees. There's people who say, oh, if that person doesn't have a degree, I don't want to date them, which is, not relevant at all. So I think purifying ourselves, even asking God, God, can you please, clear all of the criteria that I have in my head and help me find the person that you have for me, not the person that I'm choosing, but the person that you have for me. Because if we choose ourselves, and we may choose, someone, we may date someone who might be harmful for us. We may have a different lens. So taking that preparatory time to be able to not only build your spiritual life, not only build your finances and everything like that, but also building your criteria, like what is important and what's going to guide me to find that person that God has prepared for me. I think one of the things that people fall into the trap of is, when they have bad criteria, when you have a criteria of like, oh, someone has to be like this, like XYZ, I think like 6 feet, 6 figures and all these things. What happens is you miss the person that God has right in front of you. Like there's a lot of people, whether it's in a youth organization, whether it's in Sunday school, whether it's in church, a lot of beautiful, wonderful people that God has prepared, like right next to you. Like you guys are working together, you guys are in Sunday school together, you guys are singing together, you guys are serving together, but yet you guys aren't getting married. So, this kind of thing it's hard, it's difficult. Because if we had like a clear criteria, then we're like, oh, I've been spending all this time with this person. Yeah. Like, why not? Like, why not get to know this person? Because like now I've seen a few people who successfully have done that and they have a wonderful relationship because they grew up together. They know each other and things like that. But I think a lot of folks, especially in our generation, in our community, we say, oh, that's my brother or that's my sister. Or I know them too well. And they want someone who's like over there, someone far away. And then they end up, in the wrong direction. And you end up, struggling to find someone. And that's very dangerous.
I was gonna talk about my singleness. I was really happy during my singleness time. I was almost very annoying to the point where when during my single time, I felt like I was like, let me learn everything to learn about the church. Let me just like read books, like read the Bible, like whatever it is. I was like filling up my spare time with just like anything that has to do with like spiritual, outside of work, outside of studies, and all of that. So whenever I started having a crush, I am very annoying. I started praying against it. Yeah, I was praying against it. I literally was like asking God, I was like, what is this? Like, what is this? I don't want this. To the point where I was just like, I didn't know, like, if it was me, like you were mentioning, like, is it me choosing it? And I didn't know what it was. So I was just like, I don't want it. I don't want anything that has to do with it. It's taking up too much of my time. I'm thinking about it too much. Like, I was like, why, like, where did this come from? And then like, I continuously kept praying for it or like praying against it. And I was like, I don't want this. And like, when it wouldn't go away, I think that's when I was like, okay, let me not be scared and let me just like go through the motions. And then, yeah. So mine is kind of opposite. Like, I didn't really pray for it and like, it came. It's more so like, I think God was like bringing it to me and I was like, not now. I don't want it now. But yeah, that's like different.
interesting. I think it's one of the Diakon Henok Haile sermon, and he was talking how God chose Eve for Adam. Adam was by himself and with God, and that's the first step, that we should be us and God, right? Then imagine if Adam tried to choose for him. Who was it? After all, there is nobody, right? So he was like, one of the beautiful animal was snake, maybe. I don't know, the serpent, but, God basically chose for him. So he got it ripped from his body and making for him. So that's God chose for him. But Adam was in the middle of Eden, that he was exploring, like himself, knowing about himself. So know about identify ourselves is one of the items as well. And of course, God made Adam to have a deep sleep. Then we have to sleep as well. That is, not the actual sleep. We have to pray and make sure that is the person God chose for us. So,
I guess with trying to find that person, like, what are things to be looking for? Like, how do you know that person is from God?
I think you will see or you will feel it through the process. You will start it. You try to do as much as you can, but you will, as I said before, you will feel that peace in you. You will feel something come together. You don't see like a lot of arguments every day, or you feel like you find yourself doing spiritual aspect, holy things. When you discuss something, it doesn't turn to different levels that you'll say, oh gosh, how can I continue on this? Then through time, you will basically feel it, and at some point, of course, as the steps, as settling stage, you may try to tell yourself, okay, am I settling, or is it in question mark? And the guidance you have with what's called spiritual fathers, or your confession father, or other counselors may give you a point where you can examine if that person is really a person that I'm going to live my life together. So that will give you some guidance.
And Lucas, that was something that you mentioned, like knowing that it was a gift. Like, what made you think, or like what made you see it as a gift from God with such certainty?
Yeah, I think one thing I felt throughout the whole courtship process is like, oh, she's like the missing puzzle piece. That's literally what I felt. Oh, but yeah, that's what I felt. Because even while Mrs. Henok was talking, I was like, yeah, like she's the missing puzzle piece. Like that's it. I think for me, as I went to the courtship process, we just started talking, and we have, completely, different backgrounds and everything. But even when we were talking, the conversations we were having, a lot of them, like, I didn't feel like resistance. Like, it felt like we were on the same page, and we had the same viewpoint in terms of spiritual life, in terms of family life. So for me, once, spiritual life check and then family life check, like, there's not like a lot left for me. So then I'm just getting to know her. And through that process, we understood each other's humor and everything. So it was a beautiful courtship process for me. So I think when you're getting to know somebody, by knowing that they're from God, is the main thing. Is like, it's just it fits properly. Everything is in a smooth aspect. And even if there are bumps, like you have the tools and you're willing to fight. Like if there's a bump, I'm willing to fight for this person. If something pops up, like, no, I have full confidence that if I fight for this person in any kind of situation, it's going to be worth it. So it's more of like a mindset of, you are fully confident and willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that you guys reach the destination of holy matrimony.